warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Khairuddin, and so I would like to present to you my title, which is the comparative effectiveness of velocity versus percentage load prescription on the strength, hypertrophy, and the power outcomes in the resistance training individuals or athletes. So we want to see between the velocity, how slow on the resistance training exercises, or the percentage-based load, which is such as 1 RM, did affect more on the athlete, which is on the hypertrophy, power, and so on. So let's dive in. And so let's begin with the introduction. So let's begin with the basics. What are these two training methods we are comparing? So percentage-based load is the traditional method while using a fixed percentage of an athlete's RM. On the other hand, velocity-based load prescription use a real-time data to adjust loads based on the bar speed. So thanks to the technology, velocity allows for day-to-day training adjustment based on the athlete neediness. So this shift emphasizes individual variability, which is often overlooked in fixed percentage plans. So coaches and athletes now face a big question: which method better for supports consistent strength gain? And while research is growing, but evidence is still mixed, especially when it comes to the hypertrophy. So our goal is to dig deeper into the data and clarify which method is more effective and for whom. And so this study directly addresses that gap and helps bridge the science to practice. Let's look at the problem we are addressing in this study. First, there is inconsistent evidence, which some studies shows that velocity is better while others say percentage perform just as well. Especially for the hypertrophy, the research results are all over the place, making it hard to draw the clear conclusions. Second, percentage is quite rigid and it doesn't consider how an athlete feels or perform on a particular day. That lack of flexibility can lead to training that's either too light or too heavy, especially when the fatigue sets in. And third, a lot of existing studies focus on beginners or general population. It's not resistance trained athletes who have different needs. So this limits on how well we can apply the findings to advanced lifters or sport-specific training. And lastly, the study designs are very diverse. Different exercise outcomes and training protocols make comparisons difficult. As a result, coaches don't have a consistent evidence-based framework to choose the best prescription method. And so our review aims to address all these gaps in a structured, comprehensive way. With the challenge identified earlier, we developed 3 detailed research questions from our review. The first research question is: what are the comparative effects of velocity-based and percentage-based prescription on the muscular strength in the trained individuals? So as you guys know, strength is a key performance marker in a resistance training. So understanding which method is better to support they are essential. And so for the research question 2, how do these two methods differ when it comes to promoting muscle hypertrophy and power? Power relates to the speed and explosiveness, critical for many sports, while hypertrophy is vital for size and development. And for the research question number 3, what contextual, methodological, or population-based factors could influence these comparisons? We wanted to examine if variations in training experience, protocol design, or assessment to affect the outcomes. And so, to answer this question, we set 3 main objectives of this study. For the first objective is determine the effectiveness of velocity and percentage for improving the strength and hypertrophy and power performance, which this involves evaluating direct comparisons in controlled setting involving resistance trained population. And so for the research objective number 2, we conduct a systematic review of all available peer review literature within the past years. And so we use structured strategies, eligibility criteria, and quality assessment to ensure the review's rigor. And objective number 3, we identify limitations and research gaps and offer practical evidence-based recommendation for the real-world use. So this is crucial for the coaches, sports scientists, and even athletes for looking for the strategies that are grounded in both science and application. And so ultimately, we want this review to contribute to a more personalized and effective resistance training program. This slide gives an overview of the systematic review design we followed. We developed a pre-specified review protocol carefully outlining our approach before data collection began. The protocol was registered in Prospero under the registration number, ensuring the transparency, and the review followed the PRISMA 2020 guidelines using a detailed 27 item checklist. In terms of approach, we combine both qualitative and quantitative methods as appropriate. The qualitative synthesis was based on the Thomas and Hadzir in 2020 framework for the analysis, and all the methods were finalized and documented before the literature search was conducted. This ensured that our process was not only systematic but also reproducible by the other researchers. To ensure the validity of our findings, we applied a regular set of eligibility criteria. Starting with inclusion, we focus on the resistance trained individuals or the athlete, meaning the participant with at least about 6 months of the structured training, because this can ensure that the results are relevant to the experienced lifter, not the beginners or the clinical groups. And so the intervention had to involve velocity-based load as a core training variable. The comparator must be percentage-based load, which is a fixed loads method commonly used in the programming. We also included studies that reported at least one of the following outcomes, which is muscular strength, hypertrophy, or the power. And so the design had to be either randomized controlled trials or otherwise controlled trials published in the peer-reviewed journals. The timeframe was limited to the studies published from the 2015 until 2025, which is now, that ensuring a contemporary relevance. And so as for the inclusions, we eliminated studies that involve the untrained, sedentary, or clinical populations to avoid the skewed results. We also exclude the studies using the non-exercise-based interventions like drugs or device as they don't fit our objective. Any paper that did not include the data on strength, hypertrophy, or the power outcome was excluded. Non-randomized studies, case reports, conference abstract, and theses were also left out to maintain the quality of the paper. And finally, we only considered English language publications to ensure the consistency in interpretation of the findings, as these criteria allow us to maintain a focus scope and ensure the included studies were reliable, comparable, and staying relevant. So, for the information source and the search strategy, we conducted a comprehensive literature search using the multiple source. We selected only 4 major academic databases, which is the Web of Science, PubMed, Scopus, and the Ovid Medline, which cover a wide range of sports science and medical literature. The search process followed by the PICO framework, which stands for the population, intervention, comparison, and the outcome, which is going to help the structure, the strategy around our core focus, which is on the resistance trained individual, comparing the percentage and the velocity, and measure the strength, hypertrophy, or the power. And so we use also a combination of the mesh terms, entry term, and the keyword strings to capture both index and the free text variation. And so here's my keywords that I include in my presentation. So for the process of search, I did use 4 of the database, which is the Scopus, Ovid, Web of Science, and PubMed, which I used to find my article journal which is related to my studies. And then I did identify and I used a TIAP screening, which is for the duplicate records. We have 529 records that I did throw, which is because of the duplicating on my subject. And so here on the screening, for records for TIAP screening, I did get 1054. And for the records that I excluded, which is 534, and for FT retrieval that I get, which is 530. So I did include, and I also did manually to throw the unusable tags because it is not related to my study. And so after I did manually, for the total studies included in the review that I'm using is 6. Besides database search, we also did manual hand searching to catch any missing studies. We used forward and backward searching to explore the citations and the reference list. All results were screened using the same criteria as the main review. Duplicates were removed in the apps called the EndNote, followed by the dual screening by 2 reviewers, which is from my peers. And the disagreement were resolved by discussion or help with from a senior reviewer, and we followed the Prisma guideline and documented every step for the transparency. For data collection and the extraction, we use a RedCap electronic forms which put in the checks to collect the data accurately. Extracted details included the study info, participant data, and intervention protocols. We also recorded strength, hypertrophy, and the power outcomes from each of the study. And a second reviewer validated 20% of the data, resolving any discrepancy through the discussion, which this process is going to help ensure the accuracy and consistency in our dataset. 2 reviewers independently assess risk of bias using ROB2 for RCT and ROBIS1 for non-randomized trials. Disagreements were settled through discussions or senior review. No studies were excluded for the poor quality, but we ran sensitivity analysis to test their impact. We rated studies as low risk, some concerns or high risk, and confidence in result was assessed using the grade framework. Based of the results, we use random effect meta-analysis to calculate the effect size with Hadzir G. Subgroup and sensitivity analysis were performed to explore variability. Bias was assessed using funnel plots and Agar tests. For studies that could not be pooled, we included narrative summaries. This approach balanced statistical rigor with practical interpretation. So, for research question number 1, what are the comparative effects between the velocity and the percentage on the strength? So, first of all, both methods did increase 1 RM by 10 to 12% in just 6 until 7 weeks. Second, the velocity adjusts loads in real time to match the athlete's readiness. Third, the percentage used fixed loads, which may become a bit outdated in the mid-program. Fourth, the velocity offers more precision, while percentage is a bit simple and more effective. So both methods are valid depending on the resources and the context. This is question number 2. How did the velocity and percentage promote muscle hypertrophy and power on the performance? So the first one, which is velocity, did improve jump height and sprint speed, and also the explosive power. Second, it used a real-time feedback to optimize the every rep. And third, the percentage may offer better hypertrophy due to the higher volume because of the hypertrophy. So, choose the velocity for power and choose percentage for muscle growth. For research question number 3, what methodological or population-based or conceptual factor influencing factors that observe difference between the velocity and the percentage? So for the first one is velocity suits in season training to manage fatigue better, and for the second one, the percentage works better in off season for higher value. And third, for the less trained and female athlete may benefit more from the velocity training. And real-time feedback boosts effort and controls the fatigue on the player. So for discussion, let's summarize what we found in this review. So for both velocity and percentage did improve strength by about 10 to 12% across the study, and the velocity has the edge for explosive power such as jump height, sprint speed. Third, it also adapts to the athlete condition daily, which is reducing the fatigueness. But evidence gap still remains that most studies are short, male dominant, and vary in the methods. And more long-term research is still needed, especially on the hypertrophy and the diverse population. On our finding, here's what we recommend going forward. First, we need to standardize the training protocols to make the studies more comparable. We use the real-time tools, mood check-in or gamified rewards to boost the athlete engagement. And we also need to prioritize safety to the athlete, which this is include bias audits and data protection in the training system. And lastly, we can add the cost-effectiveness analysis to support the broader adoption and policy backing. So, in conclusion, both velocity and the percentage did effectively improve on the maximum strength. Velocity also stands out for boosting the power and managing fatigue in the real lifetime. However, evidence is still limited, especially for the long-term effects and diverse population. So, coaches should use this insight to personalize the training program and protect the athlete performance. And future research should go beyond more than 60 weeks and include more female and elite athletes. So, thank you. That brings us to the end of this presentation. Again, I would like to say thank you very much for the time and attention given, and I hope that this review gave you an valuable insight into the velocity-based and percentage-based load prescription.